Hey, you remind me of a man.
What man?
The man with the power.
What power?
The power of hoodoo.
Who do?
You do.
Do what?
Remind me of a man.
Okay, ready, man?
Yeah, man.
So let's go, brother.
Every man has a black star over his shoulder. And when a man
One day, said David Bowie, I'm going to write a poem in a letter. This is a love letter to David Bowie. It all started when a musical hero of mine passed away. When Lou Reed died in 2013, I realised I should celebrate David Bowie while he was still alive. My way of celebrating Bowie was to write a book, but I soon realised there's a whole library of books on David Bowie. I needed to find a new way in. I began drawing up lists. The books that Bowie read, the music he listened to, the films he watched. I tried to reconstruct and immerse myself in the cultural frameworks he experienced. The media, the products of the time, the things he consumed.
Igniting anything that might be in my imagination.
The techniques he used, from cut-ups to oblique strategy cards. For a while, I even wore the same aftershave.
Minotauri.
I wanted to get a sense of what it was like for Bowie to inhabit those personas, to wear the makeup and the masks. I walked the suburban streets where he grew up. The idea was not to become Bowie, but simply to understand him better. I wanted to step into his shoes for a while, bring him down to earth a little, to transform him in my mind from an icon, an idol, a rock god, into a man.
I wanted to build a bridge between me and him.
Die Brücke.
Then the international media picked up on my research, and with a new set of expectations to live up to, things started to get out of hand.
David Bowie.
David Bowie.
David Bowie.
David Bowie.
David Bowie.
Professor Will Brooker.
Will Brooker.
Will Brooker.
Will Brooker.
Professor Will Brooker.
There is no Will Brooker anymore for me. The project was originally meant to be about David Bowie, but perhaps it ended up being more about me. This is a letter to David Bowie, but it's also a diary, and it's also a mosaic of family photographs, Super 8, stop motion and time-lapse, vintage VHS and phone apps. I shot footage of 1960s concerts using a cine camera from 1984 and a film stock so rare I had to send it to a private collector in Berlin to be developed. The research took me places. It took me to dark places.
I have nothing really to say right now about David Bowie.
It took me to brighter places.
I gotta tell you, I think this year has made me a better person.
And it took me to incredible places that I'd never imagined.
You really are a fantastic audience.
And when it was all over, I'd written a book.
This is my letter to Bowie. You'd write a different one. But don't you let my letter get you down. I'd much rather it lifts you up. None of us can actually be Bowie. But I think that by aspiring to be more like him, we can become a bigger, better, brighter, bolder version of ourselves.
This is a film about fandom and family and foolishness and folly. It's a film about death and depression. It's about life and love, and don't be afraid to laugh. It's a film about research and writing, history, identity and memory, and me and David Bowie and me and David Bowie. And if you're a Bowie fan too, you may find it's also about you. It's about us. As for how it all began, And looking back now, it's a bit of a blur.
Okay, I'm going to ask you some questions now, Mr. Will Brooker.
Yeah, if that's
Okay.
my name, man. If that's my name.
I'm going to ask you,
If that's my name.
why is Mr. David Bowie an important person? I need your answer on that.
I don't think he is.
It looks like fun, doesn't it? Bowie in the early 70s. But it was manic, it was breakneck, it was carried forward on its own momentum, fueled by champagne and caffeine. If you listen to me in these interviews, I'm so tired I could barely string a sentence together. I'm British, I have a passport. Perhaps in a way you start to adopt some of his mannerisms, style, his behaviour.
Do you think that you've been doing that? I mean, some people have said that they've looked at you and gone, it's him.
Have they? That's very
Capital H.
That's very yeah. That's very flattering, actually. Yeah, I hadn't heard that. People have been coming out to me asking for photographs all the time, which is wonderful. People don't usually do that. It really does feel like being a celebrity of some kind. At the Bowie launch, people assumed that rather than professor writing a book, I'm a professional Bowie impersonator who had been hired by Acme. That was very flattering.
So, look, this is the first time you've done something completely in this way, and it's a very serious approach, really. How's that affecting you?
It's very tiring. It's very, very, very tiring. It's as many women know, it's a lot of bloody trouble. Can I say bloody? It's a lot of trouble, and it's a lot of expense. Doing your makeup, doing your eyebrows, getting your hair dyed, getting your hair cut. In fact, all this international travel is really helping with that, with the no sleep and just being on caffeine the whole time.
How dogmatic are you about it?
Not really.
No.
Not really. I'm currently at the period in my immersive research where Bowie went to America and started to listen to Philadelphia Soul for the Young Americans album.
Back from San Diego.
I've just come from San Diego, yeah. And while I was there, I went around in cabs a lot and shot a lot of videos of palm trees out of cabs, like Bowie in the Cracked Actor documentary, and actually shot some footage of myself in the back of cabs and stuff. I'm just trying to get a taste of that experience. I'm trying to connect with it. And I think it is actually helping me to develop a new understanding of Bowie's work.
Okay, Mr. Brooker, I'm going to ask you some questions.
If that's my name.
Are you happy with that, or what is your name?
Yeah, just Brooker.
He is Professor Will Brooker, and he's from Kingston University, and he joins us now. Will, the first thing I need to get away is, are you a Bowie or a Bowie?
I think Bowie says Bowie, so we
Bowie.
take our lead from
Bowie. But I just asked him and he said, but lots of people do say Bowie.
Lots of people do, but lots of people are wrong.
Now, listen, what is the plan? This is amazing. You're looking very cool. I don't know a lot about... But have we got a mic problem
we've got a
here?
mic problem.
You might have to lift that. You might have to lift that microphone there. Right. Yeah, very David Bowie there.
What would you like me to sing? Reading the books he was reading, which are often quite,
Well, you know, Aleister Crowley and Nietzsche, they're quite, they can be quite sinister, you know. The paths they lead you down to believing you're some kind of powerful elite that should dominate the herd of other people. You know, you can imagine how Bowie, with cocaine psychosis and a lack of sleep and a diet of peppers and milk in 1975, could be led down a dangerous path. So I'm trying to kind of connect myself with what Bowie was experiencing at a certain point in his career and try and encompass 4 or 5 decades of musical history into 1 year, the year of living David Bowie, and just to try and give myself new insight into his work, because I think so much has been written about him. I needed to have a kind of new angle, and that new angle is trying to kind of not become David Bowie, but part of my mind, a kind of satellite in my mind to become David Bowie, and the other parts observe that and comment on it critically. I do not listen, apart from accidentally, to any music beyond the point I'm currently researching. I started in about 65. And now I'd listen to nothing beyond 1974. If you're reading some strange science fiction and books about magic, you know, you can kind of get into Bowie's head. You can see, and it's sometimes quite a strange place, a dangerous place, a place you wouldn't want to live for too long. In 1975, David Bowie relocated to Los Angeles. He took her home up on Doheny Drive in Beverly Hills. And once there, he virtually shut himself away. I recorded hours of video diary and interview during the 2 weeks that I was isolated in a hotel room, immersing myself in the character of the Thin White Duke. I deleted them all. I didn't want to face or see or remember that side of myself again.
Where are you now?
1976.
Oh, that was a
That was a good
That was
year.
a highly illegal and explosive year, I imagine.
No, was it or not? We don't know.
Very dangerous. It's a very dangerous year. Very dangerous year. It's just before Bowie sought exile and anonymity and tried to clean up his act in Berlin. So Berlin is the next step for me. Very soon, next week in fact, I'm going to Berlin. Wow. The hair changes, the clothes change, the wardrobe changes, and we move on to the Low album, the ambient album with the more German electronica album. Well, I haven't actually been to Berlin for a very long time, since I was a teenager and the wall was still up.
Something that reaches. David Bowie used to live in a 7-bedroom apartment here.
As I reach the mid-1970s, I've gone back to painting, which I haven't done for a long time, attempting some expressionist painting. This period is supposed to be more authentic, more real. But to me, it's very much felt like a disguise. The anonymity is another mask and another costume. By the end of the 1970s, David Bowie had long since left Berlin. It was time for a new decade, a new act, a new performance.
Hello! When you were born.
The Let's Dance album of 1983 is usually seen as Bowie's return to, or invention of, a fitter, happier, healthier self, stripped of all the persona he'd adopted in the previous decade. Ziggy Stardust, Aladdin Sane, the Duke, other mentioned characters like Halloween Jack and Major Tom, and David Bowie, in quotation marks of course, because that's not his real name either. All these characters are inventions of an invention. David Bowie in the early 1980s, 83, sexually straighter, apparently so, in business suits with an easy laugh. Hello everyone. Poised to reach a mainstream international audience. Yes, I've just released an album called Let's Dance. Let's Dance was the first Bowie album that I really felt belonged to me. Although ironically, it was a cassette that I'd borrowed and then stolen from my mum. I didn't really fit in as a teenager. And if you didn't fit in at my school, people called you gay. In Bowie I saw someone older and cool but caged, perhaps even queer. Backed up against the wall in the Let's Dance video, he seemed trapped by this mask of mainstream masculinity.
Some great friends amongst you ladies and gentlemen of the press. I really appreciate you coming out to see an old lag like me.
It's yeah. You asked me how does it feel to be in the 1980s? Is it a kind of costume or a mask? Of course it is. It's a costume and a mask. It's a very, very, very brittle feeling. Very, very hard locked down hair. You know, the bright smile, which you might not feel, I suppose, all the time. You know, you can imagine in the 1980s you would feel like you were wearing a uniform. You were really, really fitting in. You were becoming one of the boys. It's a pose of being healthy, really, isn't it? That's a kind of look in itself, a kind of act. You must excuse me because I genuinely have to go into London town to do some business. People often ask me which persona I enjoyed the most. I enjoyed this one. It was like the grown-up I'd wanted to be when I was 13 years old. It was a child's idea of a grown-up.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah, do it again. One more.
Baby.
This is Professor Will Brooker from Kingston University. I'll let him tell you a bit more about himself and a very interesting project, and he's going to sing a couple of numbers for us tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Professor Will Brooker?
Thank you very much. It's not often you see two David Bowies on the same stage. Jake must be a bit tall for me. Yes, my name's Will Brooker. I'm writing 2 books about David Bowie at the moment, and I'm writing them through a process of what you might call method acting. When you're ready. This really is one of the oldies, the Gene Genie, and the funny thing is, it used to belong to my dad. My dad actually gave me the final 45 record. So when I play it, I tend to think of him. I suppose you could say it's kind of a picture disc. It brings back memories. I couldn't write David Bowie's songs myself, of course, but I could find out what it was like to perform them with a band. And these guys were real professionals.
don't blow us up.
I just don't want any gas coming out of it. Right, okay. Yeah. Rebel. Sorry. Yeah, go then.
Short one, scratching the sand, let go of his hand, says he's a beautician, sells you nutrition, keeps on get that hand, making up underwear, for little green hair. Woo-hoo! The changing hand lives on his back, the changing hand loves in his sack, he's outrageous, he's really bald.
By sheer chance, I found an old Super 8 cine film the other day, up in my attic. Shot in 1985 in London's Soho district. Exactly the same time and place that David Bowie and the Aliens were shooting the music video, Jazzing for Blue Jean.
Blue Jean, I just met a girl named Blue Jean. Blue Jean, she got a camouflage piece of no money. Remember, that he always let you down when you need him. Oh, Blue Jean, there's heaven any sweeter than Blue Jean. She got a holy spike. She got a temper off. Thank you very much.
David Bowie was at the time resident in Switzerland.
What's said is said, Sarah.
Up until 1 century ago, there lived in the Zhejiang province of an eastern country a glass-like spider. Oh yes, the glass spider had blue eyes, almost like a human's. They shed tears at the winter turn of the centuries.
Yeah, the white shirt and the beard and the blonde hair is Tin Machine.
Das ist noch das Tin Machine Outfit. Mit dem Jahresende habe ich bei meinem Bowie-Zeit...
And so I lived through the 70s twice. And so I lived twice through the 80s too. And then a funny thing happened. In 1993, David Bowie became older than me.
Don't you let my letter get you down.
Well, there is one person, as I say, who's been living as David Bowie this year, other than the man himself, who's been doing it for a good number of years now, Professor Will Brooker. Hello, Professor Brooker. What stage are we at now in the Bowie life?
Yeah, it's been a remarkable time, actually. 1997. No,
Okay.
That's the time when Bowie experimented with drum and bass. It was the album called Earthling.
Yes.
After his album called One Outside. It's almost a midlife crisis period, I think, which is very appropriate for me because it's probably what I'm going through myself.
This Bowie persona from the 90s was very playful. A bottle imp, a goblin, a pantomime villain, Prospero from The Tempest. It was liberating for me as I imagine it was for him. I just feel sorry for the journalists who met me at the time.
And in what way did or does this project influence your life as Will Brooker?
There is no Will Brooker anymore for me.
Oh, really?
No.
Wow.
It's not.
But you still do. You still have your work as a professor.
Yeah.
But
no, you can do that.
Yeah. But
Work as a professor is a performance anyway. To be honest, I'm thinking I might replace him one day. You know, he's not going to be around forever, is he?
Mary smiled at me, pa-ra-pa-pum-pum. Me and my drum. Sticking weather, shaking hands, happy mornings of compromise. Little wonder, you little wonder you. Big screen dolls, twists and explosions, creepy times, bashful moon. Little wonder then, little wonder, you little wonder you. I'll get that. Intergalactic, seeming to be you. It's all in the tablets, lazy time. Little wonder, you little wonder you. Past happy nations, sit on my karma, day meditation, take me away. Little wonder then, little wonder, you little wonder you. Sending me so far away, 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 so far away. You little wonder. Please welcome to the stage the White Spiders. There's always a diamond trembling. She's sitting in the Laugh Hotel. Her heart's still possessing. 100 miles to hell. Something in our blood, something in our stride. I'll be epic. Thank you. Thank you to the White Spiders.
You really made the grade. And the papers want to know whose shirt you wear.
Hello.
Thank you for having me on your
Yeah,
show.
thank you for being here. Who is sitting next to me now? Mr. David Bowie, Mr. Will Brooker?
I think I'm passing out of the recent Bowie phase at the moment and going more towards Brooker now. I would have said last week I was deeply immersed in Bowie, but it goes through phases. At the end of this year, I'm going to symbolically try and connect with Bowie's 2000 onwards, so a new millennium for Bowie. So I think I have to kind of...
And this is the 90s Bowie.
This is 1997.
And you've been the 50s, 60s, 70s, and
well,
60s, 70s, 80s.
Not the 50s, he would have been like 3 years old,
okay.
so it would have been more difficult.
No, okay, yes. So you're now in the Bowie of the 90s?
Yes, 1997, that's right. It's an album called Earthling.
First of all,
yes.
we don't know what you're doing.
You didn't offer me a glass of wine.
Yeah, oh yeah, of course, yeah. Do you want to...
Only ladies get wine, I suppose. No, I'll have a wine.
And when I'm opening this bottle again, yes. Could you tell us...
It's a very nice show so far, thank you.
Could you tell us what kind of scientific experiment you're doing here?
Well, I'm not a scientist, Brian. I'm a cultural studies academic.
And you're not a scientist when you're doing...
I'm not a scientist exactly, no. It's in the humanities, you know, in the arts. It's more of a kind of art project, you know. I write books, I don't do experiments.
I did study some cultural studies also, so I'm not a scientist either.
No, neither is a scientist, I suppose, no. It's a kind of research towards a book. I think it's a kind of performative research in a way. It's trying to connect with some experiences of David Bowie, almost like method acting, I suppose, might be.
Method acting?
It's a bit like that, yeah.
Okay, so you are David Bowie, or you, not anymore, you're more Mr. Brooker now, but last week you were David Bowie.
Professor Brooker. No.
Yeah, Professor Brooker, oh, sorry.
Last week,
it's kind of complicated.
You should try being me. Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
Okay,
yeah. Sometimes I dream about David Bowie. Last week there was an interview where I said there is no Will Brooker anymore. Oh. That was a point where I feel I was at kind of peak connection, the most absurd kind of connection with David Bowie, when I wanted to deny any kind of existence of my true self. But that's going too far, really, isn't it?
So you are performing as David Bowie?
Yes, as a kind of David Bowie tribute band, you know, like a kind of... You're familiar with the idea
by yourself?
Oh, I have a band as well.
You have a band as well?
Yes, the band is called The Thin White Duke. They've been going for 11 years, but they asked me to join them very kindly as a kind of guest star. They mostly focus on Bowie of the 1970s, but I joined them as the Bowie from 1983 in the yellow suit.
But you also read the same books as Bowie?
Oh, that's correct, yes. Thank you for reminding me.
And you eat the same food as Bowie?
Well, Bowie's diet was only unusual in the mid-1970s when it was quite famously, it was red peppers and milk.
Red
peppers,
and milk.
Red peppers, yeah, that's correct, yeah. I mean, apart from that, Bowie's diet is... it's not healthy at all. It's very good because it's the Thin White Duke period. It explains why he's so thin and white, I suppose, as well.
And you did try that?
Oh, I certainly did. I stuck to that for 5 days, and I didn't have any sleep either. Yeah, it's very good for losing weight. I could recommend it. It's not very healthy. It's not a very happy diet either.
Have you tried to reach out for David Bowie himself?
No, I haven't. And David Bowie's people said they had no comment, which I thought was actually quite flattering. Oh. At least he replied, didn't he? Or he got his people to reply. Yeah, I think if my current feeling is I should wait until, just in case Bowie wanted to reach out to me, and I would rather. Obviously, it'd be great to speak to David Bowie, but I think once the research was over, because I think midway through it'd be too strange for him and for me.
So in June you have to talk to David Bowie?
Oh, no. I would leave the ball entirely in David's court. I mean, I'm sure David can get hold of my number. Of course, I would love to have 10 minutes speaking to David Bowie, but I think, yes, once all this is over, once it's all settled.
Maybe the next question is a little bit strange for you then. Can you give us an example of how this Bowie immersion results in relevant academic data?
Well, that's not a difficult question, is it? That's my job.
But and after being David Bowie, is there another person in the world who you want to be, or just
there wasn't
experience how it is?
There wasn't until I came in here and saw you in your suits.
so another disguise develops and dies at the end of the decade.
That's nearly all the news for 1999.
By sheer chance, I found an old VHS video cassette the other day, up in my attic. Let's take a look at these performances.
It's not telly, it's film.
Yeah, I'm not really kind of enjoying the party so much as working on really research.
Sure.
We thought we were all so sophisticated back then. All we were was shiny-faced kids turning towards the new millennium and hoping it catches our good side. I dreamed last night that I had discovered why David Bowie always moves on. Suddenly my project is about a dead man. Funnily enough, waking up and hearing about it felt more like a dream.
I have nothing really to say right now about David Bowie.
So it's me again, or it's me for the first time in a while. It's February now. Just want to reflect on how the research has changed. It seems to have gained a new kind of energy, the project I'm in. I'm writing the book. The being Bowie thing has changed more significantly than I thought it would following the death of David Bowie. Because now the end of the year is actually is his death. There's something very morbid and grim about that, and something almost tasteless. It really hangs over the whole project to think that you're moving towards his death, and that he didn't know it at the time, of course. It kind of saps the energy in a way. It saps the energy, and it changes the tone. Enacting someone's progress towards death doesn't seem the same at all as paying tribute to their life when they're still very much going. It's a downer, you know? Quite literally, in every way. It's become a bit of a downer.
David Bowie, som själv iscensatte så många olika karaktärer, hade nog gjort på samma sätt om han skulle ha skrivit en bok, tror Will Brooker.
I like to think it's the kind of research approach that David Bowie would have approved of.
I like to think that although David Jones is now in another place, David Bowie still lives within us all. And that he's here tonight in us. Tonight we're going to sing a song called Survive, dedicated to David Bowie.
Oh my naked eyes, I should have kept you, I should have tried, I should have been a wiser kind of guy. I miss you.
I shot this footage at the very end of 2015. Bowie was still living on Lafayette Street at the time. If he'd looked out of the window of his penthouse apartment, he could have seen me walking past. He died a week later.
Give me wings, give me space, give me money for a change of face. Those noisy rooms and passion pants, I loved you.
So can you tell us about this unusual research process and why you think it's a good way to approach Bowie?
Is it a good way of doing it? I wouldn't recommend that anyone does it really. I think it was good for one person to do it once. If anyone chose to do this with anyone else, I would warn them it's very, very draining. It can be very psychologically challenging, quite physically challenging as well in terms of long distance travel. Sometimes media attention, you know, if your work does capture the attention of the media, there's an awful lot of, you know, your phone ringing off the hook and having to talk to people all day, and a lot of a lot of interviews and being asked a lot of questions. So it was a unique experience, valuable, I think, in terms of giving me a different perspective. But I would advise anyone to be quite cautious if they undertook it themselves.
All right, let's try this.
Yeah, try it. Now, at this point, maybe to get over Bowie or get through Bowie or move away from Bowie, I started attempting things he hadn't done, and perhaps hadn't done for a very good reason, like adding a rap verse to Rebel Rebel.
Yeah, I love you so. Sort of find your eyes, gonna look away. And I know you got a while, so they can't retain. No, but that shit ain't right, you're out of sight. Baby, your hair's alright, let's go out tonight. Yeah, so what you wanna know? Where you wanna go? I think we gotta flow, I think we gotta show. It's when you dress your face a mess, you can't get enough. But enough ain't a test, you get the rest, get out the nest and be free. Better yet, come follow me. Hey, let's go out tonight.
You could say it was more like David Brent than David Bowie.
See his pug-nosed face. Pug, 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 pug. See his pug-nosed face.
What does it feel like? It feels like being an old man in disguise as an old man. Sometimes you simply have to face the facts. This is just not much fun. And the lack of fun is going on for months. These in-between years, these in-between Bowie years, with not much to look forward to, just writing the book, at least 1,000 words a day, 5 days a week, not leaving the house. It's got me into a state of depression, to be honest. For almost 10 years, David Bowie retreated into retirement. And then one day, without warning, he returned.
Well, folks, happy Hump Day, first of all. I love Hump Day. I love this day. It's a nice reminder that no matter how bad things get, the end is in sight.
Where are you now?
I've been in my attic, like I told you. Reading an old diary.
It's an old diary from Berlin. It's funny how many of the old sights and sounds are still there now. But how time does flow. Can we always distinguish the then from the now? It's confusing these days. But is it any wonder Bowie returned to Berlin with his nostalgia? There's a memorial church, right in the center.
Aber ist es denn verwunderlich, dass Bowie mit seiner Nostalgie nach Berlin zurückkehrte? Dort gibt es mitten im Zentrum eine Gedächtniskirche.
I shot this footage the day before he died.
Had to take the train from Potsdamer Platz. You never knew that I could do that, just walking the deck. Sitting in the jungle.
I keep thinking about this old memory. I don't know why. I was very young, in the early 1970s in southeast London. And my mum had to leave me somewhere, at a playgroup or a party. And because I was upset that she was going, she started searching through her bag for anything that would make me feel okay about being on my own without her. And she dug out this old spaceman toy, and she said, I remember it vividly, she said, "Spaceman make you brave?" And I said, yeah, because I really wanted her to be okay too. I wanted to be alright. But then when she walked away, Spaceman didn't make me brave enough. I ran after her, and I've always felt bad about that, about being weak and letting her down. But I suppose in a way, only she was enough. Nothing else would make up for being with her.
As long as there's sun, as long as there's sun, as long as there's me, as long as there's you.
At this point, I realised that to move forward out of the Bowie research, I would need some kind of formal process and professional help. So I've just been to see this systemic therapist who's told me that the David Bowie research had given me identity issues on the very highest level. The highest level. Something, isn't it? Had the second session with the therapist, and she said obviously I was grieving for Bowie, mourning him as a hero, but she was also talking about the continuing importance of the war, World War II.
20,000 people prospers a Brooker. Fingers are crossed just in case. Walking the dead.
It might sound a bit of a stretch, but my great-grandfather and my grandfather were in the military, in the Navy, and they never spoke at home to the family about anything they had seen or done in conflict. I think we do still have a tendency to lock our feelings away, and perhaps Bowie found and offers us an opportunity to open up, to project different sides of ourselves, and to discover a kind of play, a kind of carnival. Had the third session with the therapist today, and she asked if I'd ever shed a tear about Bowie's death. Well, no, I don't tend to cry, but it made me wonder if the reason I hadn't listened to the Black Star album was because I was worried it would make me upset.
And now one dance song that can make me break down and cry.
I just had the fourth therapy session, and today, unbelievably in the context of Black Star, we played with shapes, with coloured shapes. This is what you call Gestalt therapy. People asked me why I went back at the end. The answer is it's the only way I could go forward.
This is BBC One. A superstar of the beat age prepares to meet his public. David Bowie spends 2 hours before a show caressing his body with paint.
It's Dom, bitch.
So you asked me what did I think Bowie was like in 1972. He had a couple of albums out, hadn't really struck big. He must have just felt he should be famous from a young age. And then he did get famous, and there's a point where he went to New York with Angie, and the record company was putting up, and they walked into the hotel room, get like this hotel room, and Angie said, "Babe, we've made it." A bit like this. And but I think he kind of rode it like a roller coaster. Did he do it well? I guess he did do it magnificently in a way. A real prince or a princess. Not a nice person to be around, but a kind of electric person to be around.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are the Thin White Duke. Are you ready to party like it's 1972? Oh, I don't know about you, but I'm a big supporter of women's liberation. This is a song called Suffragette City. You really are a fantastic audience.
Are there any particular Bowie tunes or eras that you've kind of particularly reappraised as a result of going through his chronology?
Yeah, probably.
His creations?
Yeah, I'm going to give you one answer here. Black Tie, White Noise. It's a brick. In my book, I write about bridges a lot.
Yeah.
I like Black Tie, White Noise. To me, it's the sound of Bowie's contentment. It's like he's happy, you know. It's the first time he's been happy. Maybe in all of his albums.
Of course, because he
just got married.
He's just got married. Yeah.
It's a wedding album.
Yeah.
Like Duran, it's literally a wedding album.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lodger, I think, is great because a totally opposite reason. It's totally tense. It's on the bridge, but then you have Scary Monsters, which comes in like crazy Japanese shouting and goes out with a mellow reprise of the same one. Yeah. Then you have Let's Dance, which is the mainstream one, but with Ricochet just saying here's the edge of Bowie from the 70s. Then he kind of goes mostly bit of a decline, and most people would agree, to simplify. Buddha of Suburbia, he starts to come back. Outside, he totally finds himself again. Black Tie, White Noise is a sound of happiness, contentment, contentment.
It was meant to be a celebration of Bowie's life, and in the end it felt like a wake. After that, I finally felt for the first time ready to listen to Bowie's last album, Black Star.
It's like listening to something done by someone you know well, and you're like impressed, you know. You know, well done. You surprised me again. While reviewing this album exactly 5 months after David Bowie died, I would say it is magnificent. And if he didn't give everything away, then he gave an awful lot. A very good goodbye. Very good. The best kind of goodbye.
I'm going to ask you some questions,
Okay.
Mr. Will Brooker.
If that's my name, man. It's late May 2016, and this is now the end of my project, pretty much. This is the last interview, I think. I gotta tell you, I think this year has made me a better person. I think it has made me think about myself and my relationships and so on, and family and time and how I interact with people, and I think it has not made me, but it has given me a reason to engage in a lot of creative pursuits which I had sort of given up a bit. I hadn't done any painting or drawing before this year, now I do loads. I hadn't done singing before this year, I hadn't done my singing lessons, now I keep on going singing. I've performed with a band, I would have dreamed of doing such a thing before this year. And I've also gone to a lot of places I wouldn't have gone to. I hadn't been to Berlin since 1987. So I think, in a way, the Bowie project was a prompt to do a lot of things which were really, really worthwhile in a cultural sense and a personal sense. I think it has enhanced me to tap back into and to go back to things which I gave up when I was younger. I hope that I will not forget that it's important to still do the things you did when you were a kid, and that when you were a teenager and young adult you thought you weren't good enough to keep on doing. I think most people think they're not good enough at it as an adult, and so they stop doing it. Whereas all kids draw and sing and act or dance and, you know, all sorts, and dress up in funny clothes, and then as an adult you give it up, and I don't think we should.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. I think there are some similarities between me and David Bowie in that. I think both kind of can be quite private but also quite attention-seeking. Both, I think, very, very impatient. Both, I think, very good at some things and dabblers in other things.
And how are you different?
Well, I think Bowie was better at what he did than I am at what I do. That's Bowie was better.
The plan was that the final location would be Little Tonchi Mountain in upstate New York. I even thought I would get a camera attached to a drone, maybe fly up to where David lived, and had this fantasy, you know, my friends would joke about it too, that when I was there, a big black car would pull up, you know, door open, a familiar face and voice would say, you know, why don't you get in? We've got a lot to talk about. It didn't happen. Bowie died, of course, while I was still planning my trip to Little Tonchi Mountain. Never met him, but I feel like I did.
Cold tight fingers, tapping out your memories, halfway sadness, dazzled by